Welcome to Boys Town's micro lesson on tolerances and expectations. As teachers, we spend so much time working on lessons, setting up our classrooms, working to create the best environment for our students. Establishing clear and consistent expectations communicates our tolerances and gives students the safe, predictable environment they crave. Before we dive into tolerances, a few points to consider. Boys Town programs make these basic assumptions. Behavior is learned, so it can be changed. One way this can be accomplished is by communicating our tolerances throughout the day, every day. Inappropriate behavior does not make a student bad. The inappropriate behavior is a product of previous learning and/or lack of learning. Teachers are the most effective change agents because of the time they spend with their students. More than 60% of a student's time is spent with school staff. Students will be more successful in school and beyond by learning pro-social replacement responses they can use instead of antisocial behavior. This means school-wide and classroom expectations must be clear, effective, and consistently communicated. Everyone must have the same goals and work as a team to assist students in being successful. Reinforcement is necessary for behavioral change. Actively notice the small changes and praise students for their efforts to improve and to try new skills and behavior. The goal for this lesson is to help us to identify our tolerances and recognize how our behavior demonstrates those tolerances and effectively communicate expectations. Imagine driving down a highway where the speed limit is constantly changing. 75 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, every few blocks. This would make for a very frustrating and unpredictable drive. When tolerances aren't clear, students drive through their day on this same frustrating highway, never quite knowing when they will be violating the speed limit. Consistent communication of our expectations and tolerances is important, but so is what we tolerate. Tolerance levels are key factors in setting expectations for student behavior. If our tolerances are too high, then we are allowing a lot of misbehavior. While low tolerances are important, we don't want them to be too low. Having extremely low tolerances is unreasonable, exhausting to enforce, and gives students very little room to be students. Remember, they are children, not robots. It's important to develop and maintain tolerances that are reasonable, not too high and not too low, to be effective with students. Tolerances should reinforce our expectations, be realistic, and be used to create a safe, predictable environment. It is also important to be flexible and reevaluate rules when situations change. When communicating our expectations and tolerances to students, it is important to think about how they are presented. When communicated with enthusiasm and reason, students are more likely to remember and follow them, creating a safe and positive environment. Dr. Albert Robbins' Elements of Personal Communication shows us that majority of our communication comes from our body language and tone of voice. It has very little to do with the words we choose to use. Notice these two statements are exactly the same, but convey a very different message. In the first image, we see the teacher complimenting the student with a smile and a positive inflection in the message. Really great job. In the second image, we see a look of disappointment and hear the negative inflection and sarcastic tone of the message. Really great job. So it appears that actions really speak louder than words. If this is true, it's what we do, not what we say, that matters most. Oh, the power of modeling. Here's a quick example. I remember years ago preparing my family to leave for vacation. It was breakfast time. I was busy packing, preparing to go, too busy to sit down and eat with my family. My husband and youngest were at the table eating, but my older daughter was playing in her room. Called her repeatedly, but no response. Finally, I stopped what I was doing and went to find her in her room sorting her stuffed animals. I need you to eat now so that we can leave soon. And her reply to me was, Mom, I'm too busy to eat. I was modeling to her, too busy to eat. My actions were counter to what I was saying. Our response to behaviors is what matters. When a student behaves in a desired pro-social way, what do? Well, of course, we want to reinforce this behavior by praising the student, making a positive comment, and delivering a positive consequence, all of which are positive reinforcements. We may even choose not to acknowledge the behavior if it is something the student is proficient in doing. For students that rarely demonstrate the behavior or are still practicing mastering the behavior, some sort of positive reinforcement is recommended. When a student behaves negatively, what do? Again, we have options. The goal is to address it in its smallest yet most direct way. This can be done non-verbally, with proximity, one-on-one prompts, giving the look, or ignoring the inappropriate behavior and hoping it will go away. Remember, bigger behavior will require a bigger response, such as a verbal prompt or a private conversation. If a behavior, good or bad, continues, that means it is being reinforced and is serving a function for the student. When necessary, we can investigate this motivation further by observing the behavior and taking note of the ABCs of behavior. The ABCs of behavior stand for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. An antecedent is what happens before the behavior, the context or environment, who's around, what is said, and the time of day or activities that are occurring. A behavior is anything that can be seen, heard, or measured. Behaviors are not angry, sassy, or being aggressive. Those are attitudes. Behaviors are specific actions, not vague terms such as you have a bad attitude. Instead, what actions are demonstrating that show that they have a bad attitude? Rolling their eyes, yelling, arguing, stomping, swearing, etc. Behaviors don't all have to be bad. Smiling, thumbs up, saying okay are all positive things that can be seen or heard. When we describe behaviors, we get the most bang for our buck if we are specific and objective as opposed to being vague and subjective or emotional. A consequence is the result of a behavior that affects whether the behavior is more or less likely to be repeated in the future. A consequence is not merely a timeout or being forced to change seats, but is anything that follows and influences a behavior. Let's look at a potential classroom scenario where we can practice identifying the ABCs, the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The students are at their desks. The teacher asks the class a question. Maddie blurts out the answer as she raises her hand. The teacher repeats Maddie's answer. Let's identify the antecedent, behavior, and consequence of this scenario. In this example, the antecedent is the teacher asking a question. Maddie blurting out the answer as she raises her hand is the behavior. The consequence is the teacher repeating Maddie's answer, reinforcing Maddie's bad behavior of not waiting to be called on. As a result of this consequence, Maddie will probably continue to blurt out answers as her inappropriate behavior was reinforced. Let's look at this behavior chain again, but by changing the consequence or response to the behavior, we can often affect the occurrence of that behavior in the future. So thinking of how we might respond so that Maddie is more likely to raise her hand in the future, the teacher looks at Maddie and says, "Remember to wait until I have called on you to answer, please." She turns to Jimmy and says, "Jimmy, what do you think the answer is?" How we respond to behavior communicates our tolerances, much more so than merely saying what we expect. If a student's negative behavior persists over time, it is likely that the behavior is being reinforced and is serving a function. In the scenario that was shared in the first example, the teacher reinforced Maddie's behavior of blurting out the answer before she was called on. In the adjusted scenario, the teacher demonstrated that waiting to be called on rather than blurting out is the preferred behavior. Analyzing the ABCs of behavior and consistently changing up the response is likely to affect the future occurrence of the behavior. Let's recap. Our behaviors communicate our tolerances and expectations more than our words do. Tolerances are most effective when they are low and consistent, not too low and not too high. Analyze ABCs of behavior to determine why an undesired behavior might be persisting or to determine why a desired behavior is not occurring. Change the response to the behavior to elicit more desired behaviors, to see more of what you want to see, less of what you don't, and to communicate your tolerances by your actions.